faces, and we're good. Okay. I'll keep this nearby so I can tweet about it. All right, so thanks for coming on Board Game Babylon, but I do like to talk about RPGs now because I've after 30 years away from RPGs, I've started to get back into them again because my son wants to play RPGs, and it's reignited my passion because playing with my son is the most fun thing for me. So,
well, actually, you've picked a great time to do it because right now role-playing games are in a bit of a renaissance. It's not just the fact that there's been a resurgence in pop culture, like D&D has now become something that you'll see because of thanks to Stranger Things and Netflix, and lots of celebrities are doing it in streaming and YouTube, but also because the community now has the ability to support independent games in a way that they couldn't do before.
yeah.
Kickstarter has made it a lot easier for people to be able to move forward with their ideas and not have to just go with the big guys. It's easier to be able to print on demand, for instance, like if you're going through like DriveThru RPG or something like that.
Yeah.
It's easier for you, if you have an idea, to be able to bring it to fruition and to get it to an audience that's now international as opposed to just your neighborhood. So it's a great time to start.
It's funny you say that because in the board game world, this has actually been there's been a mixed bag on that, I would say, as far as the ability for games to come out and I think find an easier way to kind of the barrier for entry being lower.
Yeah.
And part of it is just because, crowdfunding was new for a while there, and we ended up with, in some cases, fantastic games, and in some cases, wildly underdeveloped games.
Yeah.
But what I'm finding myself, just from my own little experience of time so far, is RPGs, since they are story-driven,
yes,
there's the quality to me seems higher than board games you have to tune. You really have to tune to be able to get them to the point where they are playable again and again and again. Whereas a lot of these RPGs I'm finding, like just from reading them, because I went on DriveThru RPG and I was like, it was like a whole wonderful, beautiful new world. And there's like a sale, right? Like this month is like D&D sale month. And so I've been spending gobs of money buying a bunch of PDFs that just sounded sort of interesting, and they've been pretty good because the somebody's got a passion for the story, and maybe they haven't tuned this expansion necessarily or they had just descriptions of things, but it was like the passion has been there, and the fun has been there, and the stories have been there, and maybe it didn't need to necessarily need all the development as much. Maybe that wasn't as big a deal because people can put out something like I bought some of these PDFs for like 40 cents.
Sure. Oh,
and I'm
absolutely.
like, but it's just one little thing. It's like they had a beautiful, cool description of like a tavern or something like that, and it's like, well, this is cool. This was totally worth the 40 cents.
Actually, it's interesting that another change that's happened, and this is strictly, under the hood, is that there are more open frameworks than there were before. A good example of that, especially for independents, a good example of that is our books are primarily powered by the apocalypse. Now, if you've never heard of that terminology before, Vincent and Maggie Baker created a book called Apocalypse World, which had a very specific framework where basically the story is developed by both the players and the GM, and a lot of the mechanics are based off of moves as opposed to skill sets, right?
Got it. Okay.
So one of the nice things about that is that he came out and said, you know what, I'm opening this to the world. If you say that you're taking something from it, just say that it's powered by Apocalypse and move forward. And so you've seen a lot of different types of genres that can be just expanded upon it. Like from that was Dungeon World, and then Monster Hearts, which if you're into like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or True Blood, it's very good for that. And ours specifically, going to the pitch, of course, is Spirit of 77, which is 1970s pop culture action kind of film things, and then Bedlam Hall, which is what we call Downton Abbey meets the Addams Family. So these are two completely different worlds, but they both utilize the same principles of Powered by the Apocalypse. And that's not just Apocalypse World-based games, but there's also Fate, which is available through Evil Hat, and then obviously Savage Worlds, which is just its own, mega beast that happens in the independent world. So there's a lot of things that can actually be available to you.
So that's great, actually, because you just actually explained why I have that reaction, because there are these open source systems like that, which is great. Thank you for explaining that, because now I understand, like, people are building, they're taking their wonderful story ideas and they're building on a system that works.
Yeah.
And then they're not having to go do all that work to be able to develop out, because somebody's going to come up with a good one. I was just at a conference last month with somebody who was talking about the Fudge system as well.
Yeah, Fudge was the progenitor to what Fate became.
Yeah.
But that's also very open source and it's very straightforward. So
yeah, because it was Stephen O'Sullivan who I think did that, who I was playing with actually, and he was talking about it, and he was talking about the history of it and everything like that. And I kind of didn't really get it, but I see now it's a system that's out there that people can just kind of lay their stories on top of. So that's really neat. I love that. So. Spirit of. So, what is in here in this game, in this book? Is this just adventures, or is it?
It's a complete contained world framework. It's a complete line, actually. This is just one of the books. We, after this, had a Wide World of 77, which expanded the world and had adventures in it. We have multiple PDF adventures, but also printable adventures on DriveThru RPG. It doesn't require Apocalypse World to be able to play. Some people actually, getting back to your initial point you were making, they basically say this is something you do on top of Apocalypse World. And that's great, because it's like, okay, well, I just do that. This is actually self-contained, so even if you've never played Apocalypse World before, you can just pick this up and be able to learn the system and to be able to start without having anything else.
Okay. And so as Apocalypse World something you would like, is that supplement you need to get separately, or can you pretty much in this?
Totally independent.
Okay.
In both books, actually, as a matter of fact.
And what's the learning curve for this for people that, maybe casual RPGs, they've only played D&D or whatever?
I find that, and this is my personal preference in a way, is that I find that people who are going completely in cold learn it much faster because they, are clean slates.
Sure.
So because the system is very easy to pick up, and it only takes me about 5-10 minutes to explain to folks, and it's that kind of player agency, which I know is kind of a buzzword thrown around in gaming right now, but when I say player agency, it allows them to say, you know what, I'm going to just do this. I'm not going to worry about the mechanics. I'm not going to be afraid to take chances. I'm just going to see what happens. And part of our mechanics is that if you fail, like with a dice roll, you'll get experience, you get XP points. So even if you don't succeed, you still get something out of it. So it encourages players to be proactive and do things as opposed to just afraid to take a movement. The old D&D trope of like, okay, before we even open the door, check for traps, detect evil, There's, we of course say, kick down the door. That's the first thing you do, and chance to consequence.
Because it's fun.
Yeah.
This is what my son does every time in D&D. Every door he needs to kick it down. So.
Oh yeah, and so it's very interesting because I find that because it's very player focused and because players have the ability to just kind of run wild in their own way, of course. It allows the new person to be able to feel less inhibited because then they're not so scared that they may get the system wrong.
Right.
And so that means, they have as much strength as somebody who's been playing, a typical tabletop for, 10, 20 years. They're both on equal footing, and that's very freeing for most people.
Yeah, they're not intimidated.
Yeah.
They're intimidated by it. Yeah, well, honestly, that's one of the things I hear the most from people that are reluctant is they're like, oh, everybody knows what they're doing, and then, I won't be able to have fun.
Sure.
So is this designed to be like a campaign game, or is this something where you can kind of invite people over, play it one shot, and
it's a little
have
both.
A good time?
We actually know many people. Actually, there's a third way of doing it. So there are people who do campaigns, and if on Twitter we actually talk with quite a bit of people who do it.
Yeah.
Our adventures are mostly, I don't want to say one-shots, but they are based off a specific genre. Like one of our adventures is called Women's Prison of the Apes, which is exactly what you imagine it to be.
All right, good.
And it's a lot of fun.
It's a good title.
And so you can just do that and bring in people and do it. But I also see that there's a lot of people who do it episodic, where they're playing the same characters, but they're seeing it in new settings, new challenges that they have, which is not too far from what '70s television kind of would be anyway.
Got it. Okay.
Bedlam Hall actually does play more into campaigns, and the fact that Bedlam Hall, as I said, Downton Abbey meets the Addams Family, it's way different in that you're actually playing the staff for a crazy Edwardian family. So you have that long-term kind of focus to it. Mm-hmm. So when problems come up, one of the things that inspired the focus of Bedlam Hall was that I always love Call of Cthulhu, mm-hmm. but I'm always challenged by it because people, they say, oh, there's something strange there. Let's run to it. And, as much as I'd like to say, I wouldn't run something like that. Neither would you.
No.
And, we'd like, I want to get done with my job today. I want to get done with this and focus on my little thing I need to do. And then whatever's going on over there is fine. So that's actually part of the system where there's weird stuff going on, but you really have the ability to just focus on your job. There's a move, which is an ability called Ignore the Strange, where if something's happening, you just focus on your stuff, and you're like, I don't need to know what's going on over here.
Well, it's funny because it's as you say. Like, I mean, in the real world, if you were not a paper and pencil version of yourself, you would not be running towards that stuff. But is that then the motivation for the characters is to actually get their job done? And
partially, and it's also. It's also kind of a subtle kind of, I don't want to say parody, but it is kind of a commentary about how working environments are and the fact that there's a pecking order.
Yeah.
So, of course, I don't know what your job is like, but, there's a lot of, theoretically, there is a lot of politicking that goes on in the workplace.
What?
I know, it's hard to believe. But theoretically, that happens.
Yeah.
And so part of it is, okay, I know that the master of the house, he's going to want me to go out and clean his shoes, and I don't want to do it. So I'm going to get somebody else to do it, but I'm going to still find a way to take the credit for it.
Got it. Okay.
And that's kind of the ulterior game that goes on, the one-upsmanship as well as the social standing of the servants while they're still trying to serve the family. Like I said, very similar to how Downton Abbey was. I had been watching the last season of Downton Abbey with my wife, and my wife was really hooked on it. And I was watching it with her in the final season, and she said, "Why can't you make a game about this?" And I thought, I don't know. I'd have to think about it. And so we, went to the grocery store or something. And as I was walking down the aisle, the frozen food aisle, I thought, wouldn't it be funny if you had to be the servants for the Addams family? And that's, of course, I'm going, oh, God, that'd be just madness.
Yeah.
And then I laughed quite a bit, and I just kept chuckling about it as we did our shopping. And when I got home, I immediately started on Bedlam Hall because I realized, okay, that's a really interesting idea.
Yeah, that's fun. Very cool. So what's the best way for people to get a hold of these? And sorry, David, I should say your name. We neglected to say.
Oh, hi, I'm Dave.
David Kizzia. You can tell I'm out of practice on podcasting.
It's all good.
Your game, a game written by you as well as
Bob Richardson. Yep.
Awesome. Okay.
So both of these games are through our product line, MonkeyFun Studios.
Yep.
So we, of course, have our own website, MonkeyFunStudios.com.
Yep.
And we're available through DriveThru RPG and Indie Press Revolution, which we can talk about if you like, just as a concept. And also we're available on Amazon and a couple of other places that do the distribution. And we go to a lot of cons as well.
And this is, so you can get this in PDF form or printed form as well.
Absolutely.
And obviously MonkeyFun, Amazon, probably DriveThru and all that stuff if you want the physical game, the physical book. This is, you only need the one copy, I'm assuming? You don't need all your players don't need a copy as well or anything like that?
No, but we're happy if they do buy a lot of them.
Okay, well, yeah. And how, so like you said this is a campaign, so how much game is kind of in here? Like how many kind of episodic,
Well, this one actually has an introduction called The Dreadful Birthday Party, where, because I think the scariest introduction I could have is have everyone be at a children's birthday party. If you have kids, you know what I mean.
Terrifying.
Yeah. So it's a good start to see the kind of social standing that acts as a jumping off point for the players to be able to go moving forward. And we actually do additional adventures which are available through DriveThru that we call Terrible Tales.
Okay. And
like the Terrible Tale of an Unsettling Tradition, Terrible Tale of Pride and Prescience, and Next month, we're coming out with a terrible tale of the continuation of horrible events.
Okay.
And actually, it's a very good segue into the fact that one of the things that sets Bedlam Hall apart from normal books is that we had written it in a very tongue-in-cheek way, very similar to a series of unfortunate events where Lemony Snicket. So one of the things that we've been told and received compliments on is that it has a very strong tone to it. So it's a good read, not just something that like, okay, I'll never read this unless I'm playing it.
Yeah.
Most people have come to us and said, I really like reading your books for reading them.
Yeah, that's funny you should say that, because I used to read Paranoia Adventures.
Sure.
Kind of like that. They were a lot of fun like that. And James Ernest, to me, in the board game world.
I know James Ernest.
Yeah, cheap-ass games were worth buying just to read the rules.
Sure.
And in the themes, even if sometimes the games were, sorry, James, not as fun as the games, as the actual reading of the rules. Just a handful of them. Small handful.
And I know James enough to know if he heard that he'd do this.
Yeah.
Give you the eyebrow.
Yeah. So I gave him a lot of money over the years. I've done everything. So I feel entitled to do that at least. But that's fun too, because for those of us, and I would definitely include myself in that actually have to read these things because I'm inevitably the one that runs anything and anything like that. That's welcome, actually, to actually be able to enjoy the reading of it, too. So
one of the things, I was very fortunate in that I got to have dinner with him and a couple of other people at Gen Con a couple of years ago, and I was talking to him about how he approached games. And one of the things he said, which really stuck with me, was that systems should never be the focus of what you're building, because there are so many systems out there that's not why people play. People don't play games for the mechanics, not really. What they really do is that they want to achieve something, and that good stories can transcend whatever you're wanting to put onto like the character sheets or anything like that. People don't remember interesting dice rolls. People remember scenarios where they have a good time, and the dice allow them to have a success, but it's in order to do something specific.
Yeah.
So that's one of the nice things about story-based games, such as this, that it allows people to focus on that, not to be worried about the crunch factor, which is fine, but it also is more universal and more accepting to new people, which I think is important for our industry.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I old school role player,
sure.
D&D first edition, GURPS, like 100 years ago, Toon,
GURPS,
like
yeah.
Had
to do that for GURPS.
No, love GURPS. We actually got to GURPS from playing man-to-man, oddly enough, because we used to play man-to-man battles. It was fun, and then eventually our D&D campaign morphed into GURPS because we thought it just was a better system.
Sure.
But so for me, I saw the sort of rise of the what do you call it? Vampire the Masquerade.
Oh yeah.
This is like an early sort of where it was more of an interactive storytelling experience than a roll dice and move little figures around the board or whatever kind of thing. So it was always interesting to me that it sort of role-playing was going that direction, but I had been hearing over the years about indie RPGs and these experiences like this that are, giving people an opportunity to, I think, get into the games a little bit easier than in the past, where you felt like a campaign was a very large commitment. In fact, to me, this was one of the funniest thing that's happened to me really in years and years and years is this. I've come back to this because my son wanted to play D&D, and I did everything I could to stop it.
Oh.
I bought Descent. We played Descent. I bought Dungeon Quest. I bought a bunch of other, hey, let's not play RPGs. Let's play games that feel like a dungeon crawl. But there was no substitute for D&D. He wanted to play D&D. And so then we actually sat down and played it, and I taught his friends. And then my friends from years and years are like, why, we're hurt. You're playing D&D with your son, but you won't play with us. And so we got together and played, and amusingly, so we're playing 5th edition. And one of the guys, the hardest core guy that's been whining, really whining for 30 years, why can't we play RPGs? He suddenly has these 3.5 books in his hands, D&D 3.5. And I'm like, well, you can't use that because we're playing 5th edition. And I'm like, why does he have that? It's strange. And it comes out that he has been cheating on us with other gamers.
Wow.
Which he was very worried about. We thought it was hilarious, but he was like, "Well, I've been playing D&D 3rd edition, 3.5 for the last 2 years. I didn't want to tell you guys." It was so funny. It was just hilarious that he just was so worried about that. So of course there were 2 guys that weren't there at the time, and I told them, I'm like, next time you see him,
you give him grief.
You need to act like you're really offended. Like we couldn't care less, but it was hilarious. It was hilarious. But for me, it felt heavy to come back and have to run a campaign and have to, prepare and, because I had a whole fantasy world and all this good stuff done. But this feels to me like it's just a lot easier to get into, which is what it sounds very appealing to me. I can, how much of this book do I have to read if I wanted to run this?
Oh, well, you should, of course,
read the whole thing. Okay.
But one of the things that's specific about story games, and this is technically what that is, like Powered by Apocalypse and Fate and what have you, is that when we sit down at a table, we're both the person who's running the game or people who are playing it, we are both combining together to make the story. So what that means is that there's usually a session 0, which takes place before the actual gameplay takes place, and we basically together build out the world where we say, okay, so let's talk about the city here, specifically, or if you want to talk about Apocalypse World, you're talking about, okay, what has happened here? Why has society broken down? If you're talking about Dungeon World, which is a version of Dungeons and Dragons in the Powered by the Apocalypse format, what is the land that we're dealing with? What is the structure? And what do you do? Is there guilds? And by building it together, it's not as much work for you personally as a storyteller, because you are doing it collaboratively with the players. And the players, again, have more agency, but they also have more responsibility to be involved in that. It's not as passive as it could be sometimes. I don't know how you've experienced, but one of my challenges always has been that people have said, using older systems, I'm here, I sat down, entertain me. You can't do that in a game like this. You have to be involved, you have to drive the story, and you have to be part of the story.
Okay, that's an interesting development. Yeah, because again, very old school.
Sure.
I did all the preparation, everything like that. People are living in the world that I've created or whatever it is. But I like that idea of carrying the weight. Everybody's carrying the weight of being able to come together and make this an interesting story. So
because everybody's sharing it, right?
That's a great concept. You mentioned, I'm forgetting now.
Sure.
You said there was one more concept that you could tell me a little bit about indie.
Indie press.
Yeah, indie press.
Again, getting back to kind of like the industry itself, is that because of organizations like Indie Press and DriveThru, which does print on demand, it's easier for independent publishers to be able to have full libraries, or to be able to get their product out to more people than just their local neighborhood.
Right.
Social media is one thing to be able to get the word out, but Indie Press and DriveThru, they provide a customer base, because many people, they just go through Indie Press. They look at whatever's new, and that's what they do. Not unlike what used to happen for going to cons or something like that, saying what's the new hotness there. You can now be able to find that as well. And the other thing that's really cool these days is that because more people are doing things on the internet, they also are contributing to your friendly local gaming store, because you really can't have one without the other. And the industry knows that. So what happens is dealers, in convention dealer rooms and things like that, or in brick and mortar places, they will have available the PDFs available for those who just purchase it. And also, if you're purchasing online, you have the option of being able to get the PDF and the physical copy in one sale.
Yeah, that to me is, I want the world to go there, like as far as multi-format, because I tend to read 3 books at once. I tend to listen to an audiobook. And I read something on a Kindle, and also read a physical book, because
it's
nighttime I prefer reading physical.
Yeah, because
I wish I had all 3 though. Because,
I find
in one price.
when I want to learn a new game, I don't necessarily read the book, I read the electronic version because that's where I'm really soaking it up, because that's
Yeah.
what I'm reading, in my spare time or something like
Yeah.
that. But when I'm running a game, the physical copy is usually the best thing for me to be able to pull from.
Yeah, no, that's exactly, I think, what it is. Like,
Mhm.
I'm in the D&D 5th edition stuff, I started with the PDFs
Sure.
and did all the reading that I had to do. Well, actually, not all the reading, I'm still reading, but there's a lot of
He
reading.
knows it all.
Yeah.
Don't let him fool you.
That's not even true. But the physical books are nice when you're actually playing. Yeah, like, and I don't know. I mean, I'm a book lover, so like, yes, I love I love digital copies, but also I just like having this to be able to reference and here you go. Even the cards, actually, D&D has those Gale Force. I did those cards. Super cool for reference for people and stuff like that too. So, I mean, for just my wife, who is a very casual role player, it helps that she has her little spell cards, like to be able to just look at, it's nice. These things are great to be able to just print and have, people that can refer to those when they need to. So anyway, well, David, thank you so much for the introduction to this world.
Sure.
For me, because I'm emerging back into it. I hope this gives board gamers an opportunity to not be scared of these cool little books that are out. These two are out, MonkeyFun.
Yep.
You also have something related to goth, as a word that I won't say
Oh,
on my podcast.
Okay.
But tell me, without saying the name of that one entire, goth as something.
So, all right.
Tell me that one really briefly, because my wife is a former goth, and
All right.
I may have to just play that one out of sheer amusement. So.
Okay, so actually, let me talk a little bit about the whole concept. So one of the things that has been a new development in independent RPGs has been the one-sheet RPGs, where basically it is everything that you need to have to run a game in one piece of paper. That's it. And the stats and the setting and everything. And it's very challenging to write those as opposed to something like this, because you really have to be succinct. You have to be very clear about what you're wanting to do, but you also want to make sure that you have it open-ended so you can play it.
Yeah.
So, and really, whenever people talk about one-page RPGs, they talk about the granddaddy of it, which is Lasers and Feelings. That is a Star Trek-based RPG on one sheet. It's brilliant. It really is.
Okay.
So, one of the things I wanted to do was see, okay, can I do that as well? And I have to admit, I cheated. I had 2 pages. So I wanted to come up with what was called a pamphlet RPG, where it's basically 2 sheets. One side's for the players, the other side's for the game master. Fold it up there, and you've got pamphlet, and you're ready to go.
Yeah.
So we have 2. And I'm getting back to it. I'm setting that up.
Yeah, no, that's all right. That's good.
The most recent one we came up with is called Mars Hates Homework, which is alien invasion in junior high school. So if you like Mars Attacks, Invader Zim, this is really for you.
Yeah.
What the game you're referencing was the first one we did, which is Goth SF.
Yep.
And Goth SF is basically everybody sitting around the table pretending to be at a goth club, being part of a goth clique, and being catty to one another and liking the music, and who, at the end of the day, is more goth than everyone else.
Sure.
And I did that because there's some photos with me with a lot of guy liner. Okay. I don't want you to look for them, but they're there. And so it's something where